Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. So my name is Bumi, and I'm just going to take you through what I believe, the stories I've heard, and when I visited Fernando Po, now called Equatorial Guinea or Bioko Island. Now, as we had earlier, Bioko Island is such a strategic position because the Bioko Island is the capital of Equatorial Guinea. But as you can see, the square, which is near Central Africa, that's where the mainland is. So the mainland is in Central Africa, but Bioko Island is an island just off West Africa. So it's strategic in that it was a place, it was a bustling port for slave trade, but it's also very accessible both to West Africa and Central Africa. And it is one of the smallest country in Africa. And so that's, the name is Equatorial Guinea. So what does it look like? This is like a picture of an aerial view of Bioko Island. Like I said, it's quite a small location apart from the mainland. And it was known for exports of things like coffee, cocoa, but more importantly, because of the ports that it had. And one of the things that was very popular then was, as we can see here, I saw the plaque of Cuban slaves that were deported. So because of the location, we had people who would come and either release the slaves or purchase the slaves. And when the slave trade was banned, many of them were able to get off at Bioko Island. And that's why up till today, Equatorial Guinea has a very strong link with Cuba. So, and as I would mention later on, Equatorial Guinea is the only Spanish-speaking country in Africa. It is accessible both to West and Central Africa. It became a thriving port for asylum of freed slaves after it was abolished in 1827 to 45. And it was the British naval officers that actually set up a base to combat slave trade on the island. And because of the location, they eventually moved up to Freetown because it was more strategic in capturing or helping the slaves that were coming from America. So the Primitive Methodists started a mission at Malabo, which is called Fernando Po. Malabo is the capital, and it's found in the northern part of the island. And it was the third, actually it is still the third oldest Methodist conference in Africa. The first being the one in Freetown that was set up by freed slaves from Canada, Nova Scotia. The second was South Africa that was set up by those who were working in Johannesburg. And the third is here at Malabo, set up by the Primitive Methodists. Then the mission later moved within, which I'll show you, from Malabo, it moved to Luba and Balorik. So those are the two mission stations on Bioko Island. Sadly, it never moved to the mainland of Equatorial Guinea, but instead it moved upwards to Nigeria in 1843. And since Dr. Ekebusi is going to talk about that, I won't steal his thunder, but that was how it started from the Bioko Islands. And here is an evidence of somebody who was there, who when I went there, I took a picture. So this is a picture of Matthew Barron, who was a Primitive Methodist missionary born in Nethwand Head in Cumberland, and he died at Fernando Po, January 22nd, 1901. So this is a true link of the primitive missionaries that went to Bioko Island. And as I mentioned earlier on, that this is West Africa, and that Freetown is around here. Bioko Island is here. So you can see it's such a small but strategic place. And the main island, the rest of Equatorial Guinea is here. So from Bioko Island, it was able to move to Nigeria, as you can see, to start the primitive Methodism there again. So at Malabo, what's the legacy? This, as you can see, is not a recent building. It was built long ago, and it became the cathedral, and it's still the cathedral of the Methodists there in the city. It's fairly big, it's well kept, despite the fact that, you know, it's been there for some time. And if you have to look at it with reference, that is the wall, the wall that separates the church from the city. So the port is to your left, and then you go in, so you can have an idea of, so you see, so this is the church to your right, that's the port to the left, and this is very strategic because the church was able to help the people in town. And just next to the Methodist church, which is, this is the signage, you can see the signage here. If you look down here, next to the church is the Catholic Church, which is massive. And the Catholic Church dominates, you know, in terms of structure and strength and people. So it is a miracle that the Methodist Church is still alive and well years after, despite all the, if I might use the word lightly, oppression or difficulty or the challenges, you know. And just from the church, this is the city. So to give you, and you can see that the way it's built, it has the feeling of either the Portuguese or the Spaniards. You know, you can see the feeling in the building structures around there. So, second legacy, well, the first legacy is the church. And even though it's been there for a long time, when I went there in December, it was interesting to find out that they were still singing some English hymns, despite being a Spanish-speaking country. It's a very vibrant church, many young ones. I mentioned 2 mission stations, which we'll talk about later. It is one of the main Protestant churches that stands next to the Catholic Church. In fact, the manse that was built by the Methodists has been taken over by the Catholic. So maybe with time, we'll look for ways of asking back for our structure. And we have one superintendent who is called Reverend Prospero Sharp, and 2 ministers that are being trained. They were trained actually in Nigeria. We also have women's group, and they continue to maintain the link with the Methodist Church in Nigeria. Now, this is the entrance of the church. That was updated recently, and it was updated by the lady here who is the ambassador from Ghana, resident in Equatorial Guinea. So she's a Methodist, and so she helped with trying to, you know, make sure that the church is still in the right place, and that is Reverend Prospero Sharp. Also, while I was there, we have the missionaries. These are from Mauritius, who are also helping there. They're helping the church, and that's the family there, which is great. Now, these are the 2 ministers that were trained in Nigeria, and they're just recently, last year, they're now ordinands, and that is Reverend Sharp. So the 2 of them man the mission stations. They actually travel 20 kilometers and 64 kilometers back and forth, and they are the 2, and they're hoping maybe they can train some other few ones in Nigeria again, because it's the closest to them in terms of the Methodist. So another legacy that was left are schools. As we know, in Africa, most of the best schools are Methodist schools, and Equatorial Guinea is not an exception. It has a creche, a junior school, and senior school. About 40 children in the creche. Actually, normally it would have been more, but because of the recession, not everybody can afford to send the children to school, and it's not free. You have to pay. And in terms of the junior and senior secondary school, you have 640 students. The major source of income for the church at the schools because it's fee paying, and through that they use it to pay the ministers and to also maintain the church. It's also a school that offers places for either expatriates or business people or migrants that are that come to Equatorial Guinea. Those who don't speak English, Spanish, they decide to take their children to school because they teach both in English and in Spanish. So it's an added advantage. It has multilingual personnel. The superintendent that we saw, which is Reverend Prospero, is also the principal because he specialized in education, and they receive no support whatsoever because they are not Catholics. So they have to support themselves, and God has been helping them all these years. So now, these are students that outside the school. Is just when I went there, they were, I think it was like PE. So they were enjoying the sun. That is the church, and behind you have the school, and we have the manse at the back. That's the creche I mentioned earlier. We have about 40 pupils there, about 2 classes actually. That's the manse behind, and in front, that's the computer suite. They kind of, like say, try to improvise. So that's their computer suite. They're still trying to get more computers from there. Those are the early primary school, maybe 1 or 2. That's with the teacher. That will be the next class up, maybe 3 and 4. And that will be also an intermediate class. So you have all the classes on site, and those are the schools. And the teachers are mostly the Methodist members. So it's a way of creating jobs and also helping those the students. Now from there, the Primitive Methodist missionaries then moved 20 kilometers away from Malabo to a place called Luba, which is more inland and southwards. So that's the way you can see. To your right, you can see the sea, and to your left, you can see just how green the place is. And this is Luba. So that's the way to the mission station. And that's the building that has been in existence for years now. Those are the members, Santos, and we were able to hear from them. And as I said, one of the ministers would come every weekend and once a week, and they also have a local evangelist. They take midweek services, and it's a very vibrant church with lots of young ones. So that is that's the head of the women group, and that's the wife of Reverend Prospero, and Prospero too. So that's inside the church, newly renovated by them, which is an amazing thing. So those are all the members of the church at Luba. So from Luba, we then traveled to Baloeric, which is about 64 kilometers, which is much, much further down. And the buildings are slightly, you can still see, oh, this is like in the middle of the forest. I'm amazed how the missionaries managed to even locate the place. And the buildings are still standing. As you can see, it's been cleared and it's been updated. That is much, much further. And this is inside the building. As you can, they have a drop. Once you have a musical instrument, then it's helpful to attract people to come and dance and sing. People will flow in. So that is the new minister responsible for the church. This was the old man's before the missionaries were sent out. So they are hoping maybe with time they might be able to develop it, but I just took a picture for posterity. And beside they had to cut down trees, or else the trees will, the roots might uproot the building. So you can just see just how green and fresh the old area is, but it's to expand the surrounding area around the church. And that is also again there. Then after there, we started back to Malabo. So that's the way. It's a small smallest city, but I can say it's one of the cleanest and the most beautiful capital in Africa. It is so clean, and as you know, well, you might know later, Equatorial Guinea eventually got oil. So that helped in the development. So now we are going to Malabo, and this is Malabo City. So as they're getting in, it's, like I said, lots of, America has a very strong link with them because they are the one, I think, excavating the oil. So you will see the total oil almost everywhere, crude oil. And so that's the center. And here, this is Reverend Prospero, but next to him is who we call Jeremiah Barleycorn, the great grandson of William Barleycorn. So he is the conference secretary. He was his great grandfather who took over and preserved Methodism there. And so, yeah, I asked him to verify, and he said yes, that he was his great grandfather. So that's Jeremiah Barleycorn, and who is the conference secretary now. And at Malabo, that's the women's group. We had the opportunity of meeting. I also had the opportunity of meeting the youth, the mostly responsible for singing. As we said, they're major exports. Now they have crude oil. Sometimes I don't know if it's a blessing or not, because the money comes in and then if it's not well managed, becomes a problem. So the economy is not booming at all for now. Only very few people are very rich. But in the past, it used to export cocoa, coffee, and timber, which have almost all died out now. And this is the money from the crude oil was used to develop some of the areas. Like I said, it's one of the most beautiful centers in Africa. And that's another part of the place that was developed. So finally, that is the family of Reverend Prosperos, his last son, and the wife. She works in the bank. And so, yes, our help comes from the Lord who made the heaven and the earth. And that is the end. If you have any question, I will be delighted to.